Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. We got a good one for you as always. We starting today with some big news out of Vilnius. It really is an interesting sounding city for sure. We got Biden talking about the future of the Ukraine war and the possible new member, the elephant in the room. Should Ukraine get in? Should it not? The biggest divide in NATO at the moment. We will weigh in on that. Also, we are going to France to talk about the legacy of racism and all that stuff going on in the French culture in the wake, especially in the wake of the Nahel M shooting. Some pretty crazy details. Even as an American, I was pretty shocked about some of the details coming out of France and the cultural response to some of this stuff. And we've got to break it all down. And we're going to go with one of the probably most hot topic questions for political followers, especially left-wing political followers. Should AOC have endorsed Joe Biden, especially this early? I gave my take. I want to get our guest. That's right, we have a guest today, ladies and gentlemen. Kenan Oktay joining us. Longtime friend of the show. Kenan, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it.
Good evening, Spencer. It's always a pleasure to come back on this podcast. I'm very excited to talk about the array of such important issues with you today.
Yeah, I hope you like my subject choices. You know, really took a lot of time, a lot of care.
Perfect.
All of 6 minutes to plan them. Right. But anyway, President Biden, as we take you to Vilnius, Lithuania today, he concluded a meeting of NATO allies, and this is in the New York Times here, on Wednesday with an address to that country and the world, comparing the battle to expel Russia from Ukraine to the Cold War struggle for freedom in Europe, and promising we will not waver no matter how long the war continues. So really, you know, he's in Lithuania. He's in a former Soviet Union country that is really not fond of Russia now for a lot of anti-communistic reasons, kind of feeding a little bit of red meat to the audience there. But it is, you know, in my opinion, a very disturbing framing in what was a very disturbing summit. You know, if you listen to the show that we did on Monday talking about a lot of the stuff, you know how I feel on the Ukraine admission, which I think is just absolutely crazy to do in general. But and then Sweden as well is something that I just do not think will be productive for this situation or for, you know, the broader good of you know,
Can I
the
just
world.
cut in there?
And yeah, so I'm just laying out my position. I want to get your take. Go ahead. Yeah.
So what you said, Joe Biden has some statement about how this is the new Cold War we're starting. I mean, that is just like the most stupid thing I've ever heard. Like, why would he introduce a new conflict into it? That is he's just spurring on the flames there. That's not solving any issue.
That is, in my opinion, that's what the U.S. has done this whole time. Like, completely spur. Like, this is like almost kind of like one of those mask-off moments, because it's like he has revealed what some of the critics have said to be, some of the worst critics have said to be true. It's like, oh, he's trying to, you know, go into the Cold War narrative. He's trying to blow us up. He's trying to use this as a next, you know, big battle for the American kind of like military-industrial complex. So it's like, and he's kind of, you know, that is really what he's saying with that, at least in my interpretation. Granted, I may be a little bit biased, but I feel like that.
Right.
A lot of people it's dangerous. Like, what are you doing? You know.
I mean, the last thing you want to do is escalate into a new Cold War. I mean, especially with nuclear weapons. I mean, we were lucky to have escaped the Cold War and not been completely annihilated by nuclear weapons. You know, my host father, we were talking about the Ukraine
key
crisis
context.
from the French perspective.
He is fresh from, Kenan is joining us fresh from a exchange trip to Tower, France. Yeah.
For everyone to know, I stayed in France for 6 weeks with the host family, and with my host father, we talked a lot about politics, especially from the French perspective.
That is so interesting.
His view on the European how European leaders are performing in regards to negotiating with Russia is terrible. Macron and Joe Biden, my host father says, like, they've almost forgotten the bloodshed and the horror of the Second World War and the First World War. It's like that generation is gone, and we've kind of forgotten that, like, how brutal, and that our number one objective is to prevent war.
But they use it to justify so many wars. It's like, we're the good guys. We won the Second World War, so here, we need to do this war because we're good.
Like, okay, right. Russia is in the wrong here. Of course, Russia is invading Ukraine. Obviously, Russia's in the wrong. But that does not mean we should combat Russia, no matter the costs. Mm-hmm. We have to go to the negotiating table. I mean, that is the number one priority. We cannot just simply escalate this into another Cold War. It is far too costly.
I think one of the most obvious things here is, and something that just is kind of hiding in plain sight with a lot of the events, like from the Nord Stream pipeline to the drone strike. I mean, some say U.S. did that. Some say I think the most likely scenario it was some kind of Ukrainian kind of offshoots. But Ukraine is doing all these things. United States just pouring money in there, and not really. There's pretty much officials in the intelligence agencies are, and the Pentagon or the Discord papers that were released by that guy earlier this year who got arrested. One of them said, classified Pentagon documents, that one of them said that they are tapping Zelensky's phone because they just don't know what's going on. He doesn't tell them anything. He just takes their weapons and says, I'm going to do what I want. Right. I don't think that's a situation, by the way, that they object to, because if they did object to it, they'd stop it. It makes the world go around, just selling weapons, all that stuff. But it's like a really kind of clear situation. And so I think it's a big reason why they're not going to the negotiating table, as we've seen multiple instances of European and American, Boris Johnson, we saw, Joe Biden, I'm sure, has made some calls trying to stop peace, potentially early on and throughout from happening, and kind of egging them on in a way.
Right. And what's going to happen? You keep sending arms to Ukraine. Okay, Ukraine and Russia keep fighting. More young men keep dying. It's like eventually there's a stall. I mean, the worst case scenario. I mean, okay, so we have two scenarios. One, we send arms to Ukraine. People die. People keep dying. Russia wins. Okay, bad. Two, we keep sending arms to Ukraine. Okay, Ukraine wins. That might be even worse, because if Ukraine wins, okay, now Russia's boxed into this little position where they have the world is against them right now, and what do they have left? And what do they have left to use? Nuclear weapons.
And what does the Ukrainian victory look like? And that's another key thing.
Ukraine look like. Okay, Ukraine expunges Russia from their territory.
Completely, like rolls into Moscow, is what you're saying.
I don't know. It's hard to say, really, but
the only way this happens is a funder, say, of the war, aka the United States, comes in, goes back channel, whatever, in some sort of peace, and saying we need to draw a line somewhere to stop all this stuff from happening.
Right. The Macron, the European Union, Joe Biden, they need to remember the horror of the Second World War and the Cold War, and they need to come to the negotiating table, because, the more Ukraine wins, the more likely Russia is to use their last choice, their last weapon, the nuclear weapon, and that is complete, complete the worst possible. Worst possible option. So, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so the NATO thing here is definitely very interesting, and it's definitely Russia's own fault for this happening. And it was kind of a very predictable situation, especially when you see how bad your military does off the bat, that your allies are going to, or your enemies, are going to ally and grow, and more people can be threatened. People, it's predictable, essentially, what I'm saying, that Finland, Sweden, now even possibly Ukraine are trying to join NATO. But
so now,
the question is, does that make it a smart policy choice?
No, I mean, you're adding more countries to Russia's periphery, making them more anxious about a NATO invasion.
Feeling like
whether or not
John Mearsheimer over here.
Right. Okay. They're John Mearsheimer. Okay. Right. It is in the interest countries not to be invaded by Russia. Right. I accept their sovereignty to join NATO if they want. But increasing NATO presence around Russia is going to make Russia more anxious.
Yeah. Exactly. Totally.
Right, and make it more probable that Russia again goes with the nuclear option, which is what we're trying to avoid here. That is the existential issue right now.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I really think that there are people in Washington and the people who are controlling the U.S. involvement, at least in the war, and they're being he hasn't done it yet. that's what they say they leak to people. I think judging on their actions and the fact they're continuing to do what they're doing, I think it says pretty clearly that they believe exactly that. I mean,
we don't know what the hell is going on in Russia. Like, we don't know if Putin's mentally stable. We don't know if there's someone else behind the scenes that is going to come up soon and overthrow Putin. Just like this, what is this Russian general that attempted a coup d'état? What's his name? I forgot.
Prigozhin.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, like, we don't know what regime could replace Putin, or there could be some political instability that would allow the Russian government to use nukes. I mean, we don't know like what kind of safety mechanisms they have. We have to take the most safe option, and at the same time, obviously, protect Ukraine's sovereignty. Because, yes, although we need to negotiate with Russia, on the other side, we can't let Russia just get all that they want, because then, I don't want to.
I agree with that too.
I don't want to relate that to Germany, but like, you can't just keep giving a aggressor more and more land, keep conceding more land, because they're gonna be like, okay, we were successful this time, okay, let's go again, let's roll the dice again and see what we can gain.
Yeah, I think the United States should have been their role should have been to push the Ukrainian army the Russian army back as much as possible, then draw a line in the sand and say, this is it, we're stopping here, and being kind of like the as they like to think of themselves, the policeman, and saying, we're going to stop this fight, we're going to settle it, neither of you is going to be happy, but that's the way it is, that kind of a thing. And right. that really I think would be their role in here. But I totally agree. It's going to become more and more of it's in terms of, it's just the broader theme of the segment is through both the NATO stuff and the general stuff with the entire U.S. conduct, is that they are just fundamentally taking consistently actions that will not lead to peace,
right.
even
right.
on strong Ukrainian terms. They're just taking on actions that are going to lead to more war.
Right.
So here's another. Go ahead.
Can I just add one more thing? I think Mearsheimer said this.
John Mearsheimer is a realist IR.
Okay,
scholar.
EIR.
Yeah.
International stuff sometimes. Okay, but he is, he's a smart guy. He even said this is kind of a negative view, but he even said it may be even too late to go to the negotiating table. The negotiations should have happened before Russia started the invasion. And now, okay, as more time goes on, it becomes less likely that a negotiation can be reached.
I agree.
From my opinion, because both countries continue to expend more and more resources, and it turns into more and more of a total war, where like it's kind of like some cost fallacy. You've already you've already lost so many people. You've already expended so many resources on this war. You can't just come to the negotiating table at this point.
Are you familiar with the Boris Johnson kind of thing, where they were like, Boris Johnson right before the Bucha massacre, when they were going to kind of come to a quick agreement, and Ukraine had really pushed back, but they were going to come to a quick agreement. Boris Johnson flew in and said, keep fighting, we want you to keep fighting, and they did. And then, especially
I wasn't aware of that, yeah.
And then, and that's been admitted to by the former Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, who was the big middleman at that time. There's a lot of stories about him being the middleman. So that was a pretty big thing. And such a context changer, I think, that a lot of people don't know. And there's no, there's like the United States and just the West in general, all the countries under the U.S. umbrella are not really serious about a lot of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So this is it's interesting kind of how it came about, the acceptance of Sweden into NATO.
Yes.
The victories for Biden as NATO's de facto leader came at a time of rapid change for his alliance. His success in cajoling President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Tayyip Erdogan, yeah, good job, you did it.
Of Turkey to drop his objections to Sweden's admission as the 32nd member of NATO makes it possible to turn the Baltic Sea into a region bounded almost entirely by the alliance. Though Erdogan suggested that Turkey's parliament may not take up the issue until October. Just to show he's still in charge, they'll throw it back a little bit. What do you think this move by Erdogan, and just what do you think of? Yeah, just give us a little explanation on how this came about, and Erdogan in general, in your opinion as a Turkish citizen, in fact. Wait, we are losing you. I cannot hear you, unfortunately. Yeah, we're having a
special guest to talk about Recep Tayyip Erdogan's decision to accept Sweden into the EU. Kutluk Khan Oktay, born in eastern villages of Turkey. So
okay, so he made a in his mind he made a deal that he's going to allow NATO to come to Sweden, but Sweden is going to support Turkey's entrance to EU.
Yes,
that's okay.
But it's totally non-binding. Second, people doubt that he really wants Turkey to be in EU.
So what do you think is just to get on the good side of Biden after all the election debacle?
Because the economy is so bad that he's going to need all the help he needs.
Right.
From US.
Right.
And to save his position, because if he can't save the economy and the economy collapses, there'll probably be an early election in a year, and then he may then lose his position. So
there you go.
Would he be helped economically? Would he be helped economically by trying to join the EU? Do you think?
It will never happen, though.
Well,
I mean,
theoretically, yes, because the EU helps member countries,
right.
But
they will never join the EU.
Yeah. EU is has always done lip service towards Turkey.
I think Turkey is the longest state
50 years.
50 years,
it's been waiting for 50
longest
years.
ongoing
the problem is
EU entry negotiations.
Turkey has the second largest country in NATO, and it's got a very large population of non-Christians, and European Union is probably very hesitant in
probably both that and economic reasons. I mean, they're letting in like the biggest country in Europe, which will change the demographic of the European Parliament, and also the EU structural funds, the amount of money they would have to send to Turkey,
and they would also have a significant voting power given the population and
all
that. Right. So
I was aware that it was being held over the head of Turkey for a long time by the EU about do this and you got there. So you think this is like another string along the road type of deal?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I think it could be that because Erdogan is has autocratic tendencies and strongman, but at the same time, Turkey is in a very strategic location, so Europe doesn't want to piss him off, or maybe they try to lure him in with some carrot and stick approach. So they're trying to revive that EU hopes to at least get him to become more democratic and cooperate with NATO and the Western alliances, and trying to pull him away from Russia, which is just happened. I mean, interestingly, when he released the Ukrainian commanders against Russia's wish. So I think, especially because what's going on with Russia, West is trying to be on Erdogan's good side and keep him, close to their chest.
Right.
All right. Yeah, that certainly makes sense. Thank you very much for that analysis.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was Kenan's dad, Kutluk Oktay, and thank you very much for dropping in. That's a very great surprise to have. Your perspective. Yeah. All right, yeah. So with that being said, that is a perfect way, I think, to end the NATO section of the show. But we're now going to zoom into one of those countries in the Eurozone. The Eurozone is anywhere that uses the euro, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, France is definitely kind of reeling once again. They're having their quarterly protest where they burn everything down. Gotta love it. But yeah, it is a really remarkable situation.
Quarterly protest.
We talked about this in the past with the retirement age, and obviously recently the killing of the young, I believe, at least non-white teenager, whose name is Nahel M. I don't know his last name, but it has been released now. I know.
Sounds Nigerian.
Nigerian. Yeah, huge portion.
No, I think Algerian.
Algerian. huge portion of just like North African immigrants coming into France, especially around the suburbs of Paris. It was killed by the police, and you don't really know too much about the circumstances of that, correct? Is that essentially how it went? Is there any more details that I'm leaving out there?
I really don't know about this particular case. I know. Okay, so everyone is now focusing on this specific event, this killing of this kid in Paris. But just a few weeks before, there was also a very horrific event, and that was in Annecy, and that's the city close by where I was staying. And there was a Syrian immigrant that actually stabbed 4 children in the park.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's interesting because that evoked a lot of like Islamophobic reaction, obviously, of course. And in the village nearby, there was a lot of like there was a lot of fake stories about like how Muslims were actually like there was like one fake story my host father was telling me. Someone reported that a Muslim was praying outside of a church after the event happened. It actually was false. So there was a lot of like this Islamophobic reaction to this event. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the event, but no. They later realized he was actually a Christian, a Syrian Christian.
Huh.
And then shortly after that, everyone forgot about the event and just moved on as normal.
So you're saying it's like religion playing more of a role than race?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's like
at least in the French example, in the French society, I think.
But that is interesting because I feel like there's definitely like I would my approach to that originally was like, oh, it fits a pattern of like, you know, certain people will be outraged by stories of, you know, and I'm sure I would bet like any amount of money that when you look at the actual crime rates rate wise between immigrants and, you know, non-immigrants in like France, they commit roughly the same amount of crimes, you know, as a rate level. But it fits into the pattern of like certain stories targeted, I'm sure, to certain people in the French media landscape about, oh, you know, like there was the one who like there was the thing of years ago where there was a teacher who was killed for drawing a prophet of Muhammad in class, and then like that, you know, that provoked a lot of outrage.
Right.
And then there's of course like you have the whole, you know, racial thing. But yeah, I don't know how, you know, familiar. So he tried to evade a traffic check. Because he was driving underage, Nahel did, and sparked destructive violence across France, and you know, this is a really kind of remarkable situation. So pretty much the two details that I talked about before were that he actually was able to the both obviously Nahel and his family had a fundraiser, and the police officer who shot Nahel actually had a fundraiser for legal fees, and that fundraiser actually ended up outpacing the fundraiser for Nahel. So it just shows you where French society is at the moment.
Very conservative.
Really,
right now.
really pretty, yeah, kind of grim stuff as well.
Right, the left in France right now completely disorganized. There's no.
Is Noops not a thing anymore?
Sorry,
did Noops break up?
I actually don't know explicitly what you're talking about, but there's no like specific French left wing. There's no strong French left wing party at the moment. There's no. Well,
there would be if you knew the answer to my question.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what that is?
No.
It's the union of the French parties.
Oh really?
Left wing
parties.
A
recent event?
It was like in the last like 2 years. It was after Macron won a second term, and then they did well. They got second. I think in the parliamentary elections, they got second, or you know, behind National Front or National
Front. National Rally. I think it was National Rally. I think they changed the National Front recently.
National Front sounds more fascist.
Yeah. True. I remember what you're talking about right now. Okay, well at least this is source from my host father. Well, obviously he could be wrong, but it appears that like the left is not organized.
Wait, we got to look up, is Noops still a thing? This is got to be Left Wing Alliance. Noops is still it's still going on. and they have 151 out of 577 seats in the French Assembly. So yeah, that is.
I'm curious to see what their popularity is right now.
I bet you, because like it's like people, because race is so drummed out of the society. Like I feel like, because for those of you who don't know, important to explain that France has the kind of, I would say not an Ibram X. Kendi approach. It's more of a colorblind approach to racism. In the government, they don't allow you to like mention your race in any official documents. They say, don't talk about it. Don't view people in that way. Don't say it's like a black man. Say it's a French man. Like they want people to associate away with France. And that obviously is coloring a lot of what I would say more of the social, not necessarily economic, because if you look at the retirement age protests, that was pretty clear. But the social conservatism in France, that is really going off the chains right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. This idea of French republicanism is like leave your personal culture at home, leave the culture that you brought to France at home. Everything must be left in the house, and when you come into French public life, your identity first and foremost is French. You're French.
You can't wear a hijab. You can't wear. So it's like
you have to
that banning of religion.
And you have to leave your own culture, your own private religion at home. And that is I think. Well, I could be wrong, but it appears to me during my stay in France, I think it's less the racial component and more the religious component. So Islam is the real issue in France right now. And
that's like the real people are like people talk about when they say like the Islamists like. So did you really hear people say like when it found it was a Syrian Christian, people are like, nah. Like, do you think that's what happened?
Literally like they almost forgot about it overnight.
Wow. So and do you think that's because racism is so race people are so trained culturally to not talk about race and see things through race?
I don't know. I think the French just have just operate differently with the race. I think it's just less important in French society. I think if you fully integrate yourself into the French culture, into the French way of living, and the French republicanism, and you leave your culture at home, you will be embraced. You will be embraced mostly, probably. But there's an issue arises when you bring your culture and your religion, especially Islam, especially non-Christian religions, out into the open. Mm-hmm. And this is the issue with the Muslims that when they this is like the issue, right? The French.
So you're saying, but that by logic kind of implies that you're saying, okay, French people don't have a problem with at least those type of things. Not saying all French people, but the conservative part of French society doesn't have a problem with North African immigrants, period. No matter what their religion is, coming in here and it's a little bit isn't something motivating in the first place.
That's a tough question. I think most of them probably not. Yeah. There are some people that maybe, but I think it's more of are these immigrants going to change the French culture? Are a desire to preserve the French culture, preserve French republicanism, is bringing these new Muslim, these new North African immigrants are relatively old. Actually, they were from the 20th century. But
where are people coming from the Middle East now or something?
I think there's a lot more refugees,
Syrians,
Syria, stuff like that.
That makes sense.
Are these Muslim immigrants that don't necessarily share the same values as the French society, the French culture, French republicanism? Are these new Muslim immigrants going to fundamentally change the French way of life? And I think that's the anxiety that a lot of French people have.
That's interesting. Yeah. How would you? This may be a hard question, but how would you compare Can you compare the region of where you were staying in France politically to a part of the United States?
That's a good question. So the part where I was staying, the city actually recently elected the first.
So you were in a college town, right?
No, I was in a remote village. I mean, there's a university, a building owned by Tufts University, mm-hmm. but it's a remote village.
So it's not actually even a university around there.
No, I mean we studied in a monastery.
Huh. Interesting.
Right, but
so it's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but the city where I was near, Annecy, they recently elected their first green mayor.
Interesting.
Green Party mayor. Green Party, people don't know. It's like more ecologist, left wing, progressive. But before that, no, it was dominated by conservatives. And I think the reason for this is that there's more and more there's more diverse immigrants coming in. The city is growing. The region used to be dominated by more rural, alpine, conservative types, but it's changing over time. I think.
So it's like kind of like a.
I think maybe New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. It's like Durham. Like Annecy would be like Durham, like kind of close. Like, is there a younger population in the cities and stuff like that?
Yeah, the city there's but the villages are very old.
So they're more conservative.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it'd be like kind of like college age young kid, like Durham, something like that, like the only city there or whatever. Or I think that's where UNH is. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
And then there's just a bunch of old kind of conservative people.
It also has this kind of
interesting.
Its own kind of culture, its own kind of twang, because it is the most recent region that was added into the French state in 1860. So it's almost like they have their own. There's you always have this flag of Savoy everywhere. I mean, there you have the French flag, Savoy flag, and then you have European Union.
Because it was part of Italy.
It was part. Yeah, I think it was part of Italy. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's right.
So yeah. So then that so was that guy part of the Annecy crowd, or was he part of the surrounding crowd?
He actually used to be a part of the the mainstream conservative party. I think, what are they called? Republicans. The Republicans.
Yes. That collapsed. Yeah.
Yeah, that collapsed after Macron and Le Pen, getting all the support. But he's part of that party. Since then, he's actually left the party. He doesn't really see a viable alternative.
Yeah, that is kind of a crazy. That's
he's kind of a pessimist. Yeah.
If only that would happen, Democrats and Republicans completely breaking up, but not necessarily that what they've had in replacement is any really good in
right.
and of itself.
Yeah. So the issue is Macron comes in, he just sweeps up the center, destroys the left and the right mainstream parties. Okay, and then you have Marine Le Pen rising in power. Okay, Macron is going to be gone in 2027. Who's going to take his place? Because his whole party, En Marche, is built around him.
I think the French left will put up a pretty good fight. They are.
Let's see.
I think that if you look at how they did in those parliamentary elections, it's pretty good. But anyway, yeah, it's a very, very interesting country because it's in some ways, a lot of European countries, I feel in some ways it's kind of ahead of us in a weird way, but some ways it's really behind us. Maybe it's not good to compare on a linear level
different.
like that.
It's different.
Yeah, it's very interesting to study, and I feel comparatively though, so he's killing, obviously raising concerns about racism and police in France. So again, do you think, at least specifically in that Nahel shooting, so you're thinking, even though, because in people in France, are they protesting along, racial lines? Are they saying, the police are targeting us because we're black and we're immigrants, or is it something else then?
God, that's really. To be honest, I was leaving France as these protesters were erupting. I don't really know the character of them,
because I feel that would be an interesting thing, because it's I don't know, because if you look at this guy, he's crowdfunding his campaign, and he has collected, it's not even close, 1.4 million versus 350,000 euros for the family, which is really
That's
crazy, which really made people pretty mad. Manon Aubry, the member of European Parliament from the far left, La France Insoumise, which is probably the biggest left-wing party in the Noops group, wrote on Twitter on Monday, nearly €1 million raised by a far-right polemicist in support of a policeman who kills a teenager. The message: it pays to kill a young Arab, and the government is turning a blind eye. This fund must be abolished as soon as possible. So I think it's yeah, I don't know. Maybe in the conservative, I feel probably closer to the cities, I feel race plays probably more of a role. That would be my guess.
Maybe, right.
But it's
okay, well, those numbers scare me. I mean,
what do you mean?
If the policeman is receiving so much more, I mean, it seems like.
Oh yeah,
that can allude to the current political demographic, maybe.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. Yeah. All right.
All right, I'm back.
All right, wait. So I just looked up the French polling, and you will never guess who's ahead.
Who?
the Noops group, which is a left-wing group, by 1
No
point.
way.
By 1 point in the political poll of polls.
Tell me the numbers.
25 for Noops, which just feels so weird to say. And then RN is the right-wing party is 24, and then Macron's party.
Wait, I'm sorry, you cut out for me. Can you repeat that?
Noops is 25. Le Pen's party is 24, and then Macron's party is 22.
Damn.
And then the old Republican Party is down at 11.
That's really
in the
interesting.
Political poll of polls. So yeah.
Is Noobs like actually like? Does it include the Greens too?
Yes, I think so. Because it's the
Okay,
new union of popular, new ecological and social people's union. So yeah, they have the
so
Greens on there.
they really have a united front. Okay,
they have It was really incredible because it was after. So in the presidential election, Macron gets in there pretty easily to the second round, but it's tied for the second round spot, but between Mélenchon and who's the big guy for LFI, which is like the biggest part of the Noops group on the left, like the biggest party, and he just got like 1% away. And then there was like some like communist or whatever, or some like green person that was like eating up like 4 or 5% of the vote. And they're like, we have to get this together. And they did for the next parliamentary election and came in, did really, really well. But,
okay, that makes me more optimistic. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. It's like if you look at when they passed Noops in the polling, it was right at the pension reform protest. So it's like. Or Noops passed Macron's party, and Macron's party plummeted, and then it's kind of interesting, like the trajectory between the far left and far right parties kind of mirrors each other, but the far right party is just like a little lower. So, yeah.
I see.
Very, very interesting stuff.
The
Anyway.
difference, right, is like the far right party is one party.
Yeah.
And then the far left party is like a billion different little.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's pretty incredible. It's like, you got to picture whenever there's like a left wing unity, you got to picture yourself because it's gonna last a very short amount of time.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. Anyway, so speaking of left wing unity, big debate over in our own country about AOC and Joe Biden. We talked about it on Monday. I feel like so. I am pretty much opposed to it. I just think I don't really mind her not saying anything. I don't expect her to go out and like wave the flag for Marianne Williamson, but I don't see her need to support Biden at this time. Or
wait,
really
so she endorsed Biden?
Yeah, she went on the Pod Save America podcast and endorsed Joe Biden recently.
Like now?
Yes, now.
I feel like it's so early.
That's the thing. Yeah, I totally agree.
Wasn't Bernie considered? I don't know. I mean, Bernie's not going to win, but like, wasn't
no Bernie was only not going to run if Biden didn't run.
If Biden and Biden has announced he's running.
Biden's already in it. Yeah.
Oh damn. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, like I would support her endorsing Biden, but maybe not this early. Like, let's see what other candidates we can field. But before the election, if it's going to be against Donald Trump, yes, I don't want to see another Donald Trump.
Do you think there should be a primary challenger against Joe Biden?
Yeah, sure.
Just because.
Definitely. I think yeah. I mean.
Who do you think it would be?
If we can find someone better, I'm all for finding someone better.
Yeah, because it's just so, it's like so infuriating that like the challengers are so bad. Like, have you seen anything at all about RFK?
Oh, is this the descendant of
RFK Jr. RFK Jr. Yeah.
Okay.
He's like the guy who's like
no, not really.
like the roided up guy.
No.
And
the French people are a little excited about him.
About RFK?
Or they're like, oh, another Kennedy. They don't really know. They don't really know much. But
oh yeah, it's like Kennedy.
They're like, wow, this is Kennedy. Like, what do you think about it? I couldn't really respond.
I don't know.
But, yeah.
No, yeah, he's like anti-vax, all that kind of stuff. So it's like that's like the biggest thing. It's just like crazy.
But like one thing, right? He is like against the military industrial complex and the CIA and stuff like
honestly,
that. Honestly,
I'm really because he's like fine with Israel and everything. Like the only thing I'm really convinced on is that he's against the Ukraine war. I buy that, but it's like that could be just because it's like popular at the moment. And like he like completely caved on like Medicare for all, Israel, like all this stuff that's like, if you're gonna run a challenge from the left, you got to do that kind of stuff. He didn't do that, and he did all the stuff to the Democratic base, like the anti-vax stuff, the anti-Ukraine stuff, all the stuff that they hate. So it's like, It's like, what are you even doing? So it's like,
I would have expected a Kennedy to be more ambitious than that. Yeah,
he's just like you can't have the thing about a dynasty is like it deteriorates after a while.
Deteriorates,
like,
right.
Yeah, he's definitely
intermarrying, right? Yeah,
and it's like it could not be a more ripe type of attitude or environment,
right? I mean, like if we had some like glorious Kennedy to sweep in and save the day.
We need one of the Midwestern governors. That's what we need.
Maybe we do. I don't know.
Because they have built like really good like political machines out there, getting stuff done. Minnesota,
really?
Chicago, like the Illinois. J.B. Pritzker is doing a lot of stuff, but he's like, he made it from a like light blue state to a dark blue state essentially. But
we need like a 30-year
tearing it up right now. Yeah. Like the governor of Wisconsin, he's also incredibly old, but he changed the law after it passed with veto. Like you just crossed out like the numbers that would do it just for the year. To like, it was just like school funding or whatever, and he made it last for like 400 years.
Damn.
In a law, like that's like no, because it shows like Democrats could do that stuff too if they want to. It's like that's something a Republican would do, and we never see it from the Democrats, but something they can do if they want it.
Yeah.
If they wanted to, they would.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see, though. Yeah. I know. I agree with you. I think it's way too early for AOC to endorse Biden, but I think she should endorse Biden at a certain point.
I don't think it really matters, honestly.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter much.
It's like, come on.
At the end of the day,
she could come out and do whatever. This is like, and anyone can. It's like I'm not gonna vote for Joe Biden. You know, I'm not gonna. And the only reason I would vote for like my House candidate is because he's like running again. I like him. He's coming back after getting kicked out. It's like a cool story if he gets back in there. And he's not that bad. You know, he's not perfect by any stretch, but he's definitely not that bad. So like that's what's registering me to vote. Like I did not vote in the midterms, and my district flipped from blue to red. It's like a Biden plus 10 district, and you know, people like literally. There's 2 people in my life that yelled at me, and quite strongly for not doing that. And I was like, sorry.
For not voting?
For not voting.
Yeah, that's
because it's like, you know, if you like, I think the way it works, the burden is on the candidate, not on the voter, in my opinion.
Well, I guess that's where we kind of disagree. Yes, the burden is on the candidate, but at the end of the day, you know, you are yourself, and you make decisions for yourself.
Yeah, and but it's like,
yes, if we have to choose between two lesser evils, then yes, of course, choose between the lesser evil.
Yeah, but it's like no one said I have to vote. Like, you know, voting is not mandatory.
No one said you're right, but you should. Yeah. Or at least from but you know, we have a friendly disagreement there.
Yeah, very friendly. Yeah. You're not one of the people. You're definitely not one of the people that yelled at me, so it's good.
No. Did I? I don't know. I can't remember anymore.
No, you did. No, you're good. You're good. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. It's all the time we got for today. Really do appreciate it, and yeah, hope you enjoyed it as well.
Always a pleasure, Spencer.
It's always a pleasure. All right. We will see you on Friday. It's Newsflash.